Welcome back to the channel, everybody. I'm Asia. I'm your host here at America First AI Network podcast, or America First AI podcast, I should say, and the founder of America First AI Network. Before we jump into the meat and potatoes of today's episode, I just want to remind you guys to click the link in the description at the end of this episode, of course, and download your free copy of my book, Becoming Brazen. It is a book I literally wrote back in 2017. It has never been professionally edited or published or not even self-published. I tried to, and then I got a little bit scared. But since I'm putting myself out there on podcasts, I figured, well, let's see what the audience thinks. And just a heads up, this was in my Jackie Collins phase, so it is a bit vulgar. So be prepared for that. Some graphic scenes in there. But I think you guys are going to be entertained. It was literally at the beginning of my red pill shift. So I think you guys should check it out. Click the link at the end of this to get your copy. Now, we have to talk about what's happened with Candace Owens, Erica Kirk. And honestly, I'm not even going to go too much into the Erica Candace thing because I'm so sick of the melodrama and soap opera. It feels like watching like Vicky Lord and excuse me, Dorian Lord and Vicky Buchanan from One Life to Live. Like it felt like that. And every now and again, the two of them came together to fight a bigger problem, a bigger threat. And that's what it feels like, that specific meeting. And honestly, the reason why I think a lot of us were so excited is because we were hoping that it would yield some answers. It would give us more answers to questions. And honestly, from what I'm hearing from Candace's camp, it doesn't answer any questions. It just gave us more. The only thing I really only got one thing from that. Well, two things I should say, that there are some people at Turning Point that should be looked into more. And to some degree, I think the feds are involved. And I will say more on that as we go through this episode. Now, I did say earlier in this week when I did my episode on these new internet bills, and we'll talk more about that on this channel because I get that we all want to know more about what's happening with Candace and talking about Nick and reacting to these hot button issues. But I am passionate about what the heck they are about to do to the internet because I am someone who is building a brand online and it's way more cost effective to build a business in the digital space. And I'm concerned about what's happening there. And so we are going to do some coverage on that as time goes on. But now that Candace has done a little bit more episodes this week following the Erica Kirk meeting, it became more important for me to talk about this today because more information came out, especially in her episode yesterday, which was like mind blown, brains all over the wall. That's how shocked I was. I won't say shocked, but that's how, like, literally that episode confirmed my suspicions. Suspicions that people would call us crazy for. And you know what? And I got to say, before we get right into the nitty gritty of today's episode, I'm sick and tired of people calling us crazy because we are calling out a conspiracy, right? They keep saying conspiracy theorist. Conspiracy theorist not. Conspiracy is a crime. Conspiracy to commit murder, crime. Conspiracy to commit robbery, theft. These conspiracy itself is a crime. Why are we crazy for acknowledging that there is a conspiracy? Meaning there are multiple people, multiple players involved in relation to said crime or cover up of said crime. Conspiracy is the crime. So I'm sick and tired of people just, chalking her off, Candace off for being crazy because she's acknowledging and investigating what is clearly a conspiracy, because you're not going to convince us that some 20-something-year-old, demented, tranny-loving furry did this by himself. You're just not going to convince us. Even if one other person was involved, it's a conspiracy to commit murder. So stop calling us crazy for that. Stop calling Candace crazy for that. Now, I have to say, and I'm hoping I'm not the only one who thinks this. Please let me know in the comment section. I am grateful that Candace is investigating. I am. That she's looking into this because I was feeling like Boo Boo the Fool When I was first hearing what the feds and these press conference, what they were saying about this case, how quickly it happened, who they said did it, that he was the only one. There was too many weird things happening on that day. And I'm like, I watched too many cop shows for this to be the story, for this to be the case. And so I'm glad that she started investigating it. But since she's been investigating, with every passing day, week, episode that she's done and her coverage and I should say her coverage of her investigation, it has been a bit messy. And it does feel like it is all over the place. And she does get a lot of flack for that. And I think in some regard, that is a legitimate criticism because it's like I said, it's even hard for me to track. And I think she's on the right path to getting to the truth. It's just hard to follow. And I get it, right? Like she's trying really, really hard to keep certain things close to the chest. And she's got to slow drip some information because she's got to verify some of the tips that she's getting. She's got to make sure sources are legitimate before she says something on her podcast. And I get all of that. And in fact, I respect her due diligence. So she's not just saying things, and that it has been vetted. And I appreciate that. But again, it does feel all over the place sometimes because her coverage of her own investigation does feel all over the place. I mean, there are so many players involved and so many elements involved. I mean, it is a conspiracy to assassinate a man. And because of his status in our society and in our culture and in our politics, I wouldn't be surprised that there were a whole bunch of elements involved. But that's what makes it even more difficult to follow. And honestly, the way that she covers her own investigation, it's making me feel like I am watching the longest multi-episode arc of Law and Order, and it makes me want to skip to the last episode and get to the end. That's how her coverage feels. Now, I understand and I understand what she's doing, and I get that, but it does make it hard to follow. Now, with all that said, putting that aside, I do have to say, one of the criticisms that she got when she went on Pierce Morgan and even Anna Kasparian, she said it on her show on the Young Turks. I think that was earlier this morning or sometime last night. I get up in the morning, I have my coffee, and I watch like different perspectives on both sides of the aisle. And Anna Kasparian is, and Pierce Morgan are one side. Anyways, they were criticizing her because they're like, Anna at least gives Candace some credit to her investigation because she does think that Candace is on the right path and she has genuine, sincere motive to investigate, that she's not doing this for money, where Pierce was just disrespectful and implied that. But Anna and Pierce are making it seem like that she has this theory and that it's hard to follow and it's hard to figure out what her theory is. Now, here's the thing that's killing me about the two of them who claim to be journalists. Understand, I do not claim to be a journalist. I don't claim to be an investigator. I'm just another podcaster or another woman with an opinion and a microphone and a semi-okay camera. That's it. I don't claim to be something that I'm not. And so it makes sense why I would theorize because I'm not an investigator. I can take facts and come up with my own theory of what I think happened, but that's not what she's doing. She's doing exactly what investigators do. You look at every possible motive. I mean, I said this in one of my episodes before, right? When I was going over the whistleblowers from Turning Point and how tying that in with what circumstantial evidence that she had released at the time, how I was able to just kind of put things together, which implicated Turning Point either in specifically, I think, in the cover up and in revealing motive to his death. I was able to do that. I was able to come up with theories. But she's literally turning over every stone possible. And if it leads to something, she continues to investigate it, right? She's not coming up with theories. She's looking at the facts, following the evidence, following the verified witness statements and the sources that she's getting, and she's trying to draw a conclusion based on said facts, evidence, witness statements, sources that she has. That's what investigators do. So the fact that they're criticizing her for that, I do not find fair at all. You can say it's hard to follow her train of thought and start to follow her investigation because it seems messy and all over the place. And one day it's about the planes, and the next it's about Turning Point and its funding. The next it's about a person. The next it's about Israel. It does feel all over the place. And that, I would say, is a valid criticism. But to say that she's a hack because she's not making it clear what her own theory is. It's like she's not theorizing, she's investigating, trying to get to the truth and draw a conclusion based on the facts and the evidence and the statements and witness statements that she's getting upon verification, of course. Now, with that criticism in place, not the hogwash that they're peddling, the one that it's messy and seems all over the place, because on that I would agree. I had to put together my own little thing so I can follow her. And I might even just keep doing this moving forward, specifically about just what I'm getting from Candace. And then I may do a later episode, probably after the holiday, where I tie in all of the stuff and all of the facts that I've learned from multiple civilian investigations related to Turning Point USA, their funding, Candace's investigation into the assassination, possible motives, and clearly multinational operations that she's suggesting are there. And I might tie it together into this little project that I have to keep it going. Because honestly, I think this is the only time I think the timeline it started to make sense to me. It's funny that I say timeline because it actually brings me to this. Now, before I jump into it, I got to say that I did use Grok AI to tie this all together. So I'm not going to say that this timeline is 100% accurate. I would say that's more like 70 to 80% correct because I leveraged Grok. I mean, I literally spent like 3 hours doing this. And I think if I spent the entire day or I spent hours upon hours pulling individual transcripts of our episodes, I think it would be more like 90 to 99, 95% accurate as far as the timeline is concerned. But in order for me to understand all of the information, because again, watching her coverage gets difficult and it's like information overload. The only way for this to make sense to me was to put it in like a cohesive linear timeline like you would see on a murder board in like The Closer or Major Crimes or Law and Order, like how they actually get like the time of death and they start tracking like the victim's timeline and then looking at the suspect's movements and tying it in to the timeline that you see on their murder board. That's what I had to do to make sense of this. Now, because she learned more from the meeting with Erica, I did want to wait to do this episode because I had already started preparing this. Because again, I was already prepared to do an episode on Tuesday. Really it was about reacting to what Nick Fuentes was saying about Candace and this, that, and the third. And I knew about the meeting. So I was like, you know what? I'm not going to do that episode. I don't even want to react to how Nick is talking about Candace. Personally, I think he's acting like a petulant child, excuse me, and he's acting a bit of a jackass. And I do think that Candace, as it relates to Nick, is behaving like a jackass in some regard. I look at the two of them like the pantheon of America First. Get it together, people. But that's a side note, episode for another day. Anyways, I think she was hoping for that meeting to be a little bit more fruitful. And the only thing that I can say is, based on what facts we have been given, what little she learned from that meeting, the one thing I can say that seems definitive and clear is that Turning Point USA has a motive, that there are people in Turning Point that need to be looked into some more. And for whatever the reason, our United States federal government was involved in either the conspiracy to commit the crime and or the cover-up of it all. Now, I'm going to go through this timeline with all of you, so be prepared. This episode is probably going to be longer than 50 minutes because we're going to go through this timeline. And it does include the Egyptian planes because it makes sense. Again, when you put it in a linear timeline like you see on the murder board, like cohesive timeline, It makes sense and it's easier to follow. And again, 70 to 80% accurate. So if I get it wrong, just let me know in the comment section. But I do want to know what you guys think about the timeline that I've created. And this isn't like a PDF file that I'm going to make available for you guys to download. I'm literally just going through it. And you guys know me. I don't share screen. I don't overproduce this because I spend most of my time producing cartoons. Anyway, let's jump into this murder board timeline of Candace's facts, shall we? So in pre-2022, because she mentioned this in some of her investigation that she's covered on her podcast. Pre-2022, two Egyptian military planes set flight patterns overlapping, and she clarified on Pierce Morgan, TPUSA, Faith, and these were events that a lot of the time Erica Kirk was present and sometimes Charlie, right? These Egyptian planes in pre-2022. Between 2022 and summer of 2025, 73 flights are overlapping with TPUSA Faith, right? Because she again clarified that these Egyptian planes, right? And the planes are Egyptian. She's not necessarily saying that Egypt had something to do with this. She's just saying that the planes are Egyptian. That 73 of their flights overlap with Turning Point USA Faith events. And a lot of these events, Erica was present at these locations. 29 of these routes, if you will, were overlapping with events that Charlie Kirk was present at. Now, these plane routes were going through Israel and they were turning the transponders off. Now, I'm not a tech person. I'm not an aero mechanic, but I watch too much television, right? I know what the transponder is. This is the thing that tracks a plane. So God forbid it goes down. We know where and when it went down. They turned it off every time they're going through Israel. Suspect. It's not a coincidence. On top of that, every time these planes landed in America, there were always rental cars tied to the passengers of said planes. Again, I'm just going through the timeline, right? This is not me saying this. I just put her stuff in a cohesive ABCD 1, 2, 3 linear timeline for us to best understand it. Now, in summer 2025, Candace made it clear that there was a Hamptons meeting. She said that Charlie told her that this was first-person knowledge from Charlie to her. That much I remember. This was a private intervention of Charlie hosted by Bill Ackman and others like Seth Dillon, right? Kirk was confronted over Israel criticisms, right? Being present at some of the AmFest and some of the Turning Point events, right? That allegedly threats were made. Again, this is what she was being told by Charlie, that large money had been offered to fund Turning Point by Bibi Netanyahu to take TPUSA to the next level. Charlie Kirk declined that money. This was in the summer of 2025 before he was killed. Coincidence? I think not. Early September 2025, Kirk expressed concerns about Turning Point burning cash too quickly and was also questioning the fund sources. Like, where's all this money coming from and where the heck is it going? We're burning through it too quickly. On top of that, where the hell is it coming from? I mean, these are valid questions that any CEO would ask when you're burning through a lot of cash flow that, like, it's not making sense to him. And he wanted to look into it. So September 2nd of this year, Kirk signed an internal memo announcing that Justin Strife will be the new COO and leading their DOGE department to complete a mini audit of their spending, where the money is going, right? A culture reshape related to money, being cost effective. This makes sense. You have people like Andrew Colvett saying, oh, we always do internal audits. And that other little guy with the glasses that looks weird sitting there in Charlie Kirk's studio, even he's weird. He kept saying that, oh, we perform audits all the time. It's like, but DOGE didn't exist when Turning Point did. DOGE is something different. Its target is fraudulent spending. That's the purpose of DOGE. We can hide it under fancy euphemisms. It's about efficiency. Hogwash. It's targeting fraudulent expenditures. Waste, you mean fraud. That's what you're looking for. People who are committing fraud. That's what you're looking for. That's what DOGE's purpose is. And he did that on September 2nd, 2025. I mentioned this in my other episode when I was talking about the whistleblowers and the Wolf accountant's own investigation, how I said that I think that the fact that he did that days before he was murdered is a motive, because you're about to be found out. He's about to find out who is manipulating the money, who's taking it, where is it going. The names are about to be revealed. This is a clear motive. Not even gonna lie, side note, just putting a pin in this timeline. When she was talking about her meeting with Erica Kirk, I don't know how many times she said Andrew Colvett, but before the meeting, I was already not trusting him. After that meeting and after she disclosed what was said, as much that she could disclose anyway, Andrew Colvett is seeming more and more like a bad guy here. Like, he's looking more and more suspicious. I mean, if I were, Olivia Benson or Detective Stabler, from Law and Order investigating financial crimes, Andrew Colvett is the guy I'm looking at. This is suspicious. He's already keeping his mouth shut when he can have cleared up a lot of stuff that Candace was claiming, letting all these people attack her, and knowing that he could have told the truth. The lie that he told about the surgeon, you're lying too much, you're keeping quiet too much, allowing her to be attacked. Something's fishy, you're suspicious. You sus, as the younger generation might say. My gosh, I sound like my mom. I never thought I'd say that. Back to the timeline. Days after September 2nd, it's between the 2nd and the 9th, Kirk warns his staff and associates, right, on the ground at Provo he warns his staff via text about donor pressure, that he's feeling it more. He was talking about abandoning the Israeli support and the cause for Israel. And then literally the day before, on September 9th, the day before he's killed, he says, they're going to kill me. They are going to kill me. Andrew Colvett got that text, and one other person got that text, hinting at a betrayal. Because why is no one reporting this? Did anybody follow up with who is they, Charlie? Why did nobody ask that question of Charlie? Where are those messages? And I don't know. She obviously didn't have a hard copy. She disclosed that. But Erica Kirk has the phone. She found the messages. Did no one follow up? These were the questions that I really want asked. And maybe Candace got it and she's waiting to disclose because, again, the slow dripping of information, because she's waiting to verify some things. And so I will give her some grace in that. September 10th. It's early morning. Egyptian planes powered on at Provo. Passengers deploy in suspected vehicles, including white rental cars. These are the cars that the local law enforcement and the feds say were suspect. These rental cars are tied to the Egyptian planes. Also, Tyler Robinson is allegedly arriving early at the campus, but there's no video of him getting on the roof, scaling the side of a building to get to said roof. There's nothing, no footage. All of this in the morning of September 10th. Okay. At 12:23 p.m., Charlie is shot. And immediately after, a Turning Point USA staffer is doing a selfie video where he's saying, they just shot Charlie, he's dead. Most people say that's unusual behavior. Why aren't you ducking? Why aren't you running? It's a fight or flight. You are either running toward your friend or you're running away from the gunfire because you're in fear of your life, that you're going to get yourself caught up in it. And so that was just unusual behavior. I would agree. It's fight or flight. You either running toward the danger to go help your friend, or you're getting the hell out of there because, pop, pop, pop means it's time to hit the ground, hit the deck, get out. So I would agree that it's weird. I wouldn't necessarily say suspicious behavior. Now, at least not that day. I wouldn't have said so. Weird, but not suspicious. Not until more stuff was coming out about Turning Point. But okay, the afternoon happens, late mid-afternoon. The manhunt begins right at around 12:53, 1 p.m. Candace said in her episode yesterday, right around this time, there was a Utah police officer who stopped one of the suspected vehicles, one of the white vehicles. And when the cop pulled this car over, right, because again, it's suspected to be a part of this crime, to commit murder against Charlie Kirk. The cop pulls it over. What happens? It's a Fed. The person driving the car shows their badge. This is a federal agent in the car that is suspected to be involved in the killing of Charlie Kirk, and it's a Fed in the driver's seat. Come on. This is during the manhunt, and these cars have been flagged to be suspicious. And it's a Fed driving the car. Come on. This is the same rental car tied to the Egyptian plane passengers. Come on. Federal agent flashing a badge in the car that was assigned to a passenger from the Egyptian plane right after he gets shot during the manhunt. What do you think? We're stupid? This is why it was so important to put this stuff in a timeline in order because, again, it was insane not understanding it. During this manhunt, again, Candace revealed this in her episodes before. Yesterday, local law enforcement, they're searching the area where the gun was actually found, but now they're searching the area because they're saying that the gun was dropped in that area. So the cops go through it, right? These elite local law enforcement are going through. They don't find it. And they're like, we're human just in case. Let's pull out the bomb dogs, right? Dogs whose job it is to locate with their strong sense of smell to find firearms, explosives, anything of that nature. They comb the same area. The bomb dogs don't find anything. Fast forward just a little bit later, the feds show up. They talk to some inexperienced local law enforcement, men who've not been on the job for that long. And then they point out, hey, just go back over there. Go see if the gun's over there again. Just go check. Just please, just go check again. Go check. And then all of a sudden, we found the gun. There it is. So one of you feds planted this thing here. Because why is it that elite cops of local law enforcement couldn't find it? Why is it that elite bomb dogs, whose job and role it is to detect explosives and firearms, could not find it? But these two inexperienced cops could. All the while, this is all happening during the beginning hours of the manhunt. All of this is happening. Feds are involved in all of this. Passengers connected to these Egyptian planes are being mentioned around this time of the manhunt. Something isn't right here. Now let's get to late afternoon, early evening. Egyptian plane departs the area. And then Tyler Robinson, he visits a Dairy Queen and some casual clothing. He disposes of items. Right around the same time this plane is taken off. September 12th, Tyler is turned in by his family, but there's no footage of him surrendering to law enforcement. And then we get these crazy-ass text messages that Kash Patel wants us to believe he wrote. It's like what? It reads like a soap opera. Like these don't sound like real-life young adults or adults in college that are college grade. This sounds like somebody wrote for them thinking, I think this is how young people today talk. That's what it read like. It just seemed so unreal. Post arrest of Tyler Robinson, there's missing footage of the campus but leading up to the shooting of Charlie Kirk, during the shooting of Charlie Kirk, and after the shooting of Charlie Kirk. It's missing. The arrest of Tyler Robinson, no one can find it. The hospital camera footage, missing. It's gone. Then you have federal agents stopping the surgeon from returning to the OR to prep Charlie's body for Erica so she can see him. And then the feds are seizing all kind of video footage from anywhere in that hospital related to this particular case. Then we're finding out that there's military involved, right? She has a military source that confirmed all of the involvement here. The feds have also confirmed that the French Legion was on the ground. Again, these are her facts that have been confirmed. Now, obviously, this is an ongoing investigation that's happening at the federal level as well as local law enforcement. At least that's what they're saying. And then obviously Candace. And so I'm sure she's going to look more into this. And honestly, as she goes on further, I'm going to update the timeline because obviously there are some gaps in this, obviously. And I think she really wants to fill in those gaps. But the reality is, in my personal opinion, I do think she's onto something. I do. That timeline, in my personal opinion, the the one thing that seems clear is that the feds are involved, and not in a good way. I think they sent local law enforcement on a wild goose chase. I think they were involved to some capacity. Again, either in the conspiracy to commit murder or to cover it up. It's one or the other, or both. But you're not going to convince me that this Tyler Robinson kid did it by himself. And then I'm looking at the facts that she's been able to verify and confirm with military sources, witnesses on the ground, local law enforcement, and their own witness statements of what they were able to witness of the feds' behavior, their evidence manipulation, not taking the cell phone of the victim, not impounding the vehicle of which that was the vehicle that was used to take Charlie to the hospital, not bringing in people for questioning, not charging them appropriately. There's just too many inconsistencies from the feds that scream complicit. And it's not negligence, it's intentional. It's too many coincidences for this to be an accident, for you to have just made mistakes along the way. You're supposed to be the most elite investigators in the country, and you're failing this badly. You're doing this on purpose. You are complicit. It's not negligence. Now, to everyone who's saying that they think Candace sold out because she did this meeting with Erica, I don't believe that. I honestly think that, two adults had to come together at some point, and I didn't trust Turning Point's invitation. Personally, I thought that was fake from the jump. I looked at it just like I looked at the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel. Whoever thought that was going to stand was ignorant or naive. You hoped for the best, but didn't prepare for the obvious, that this was going to fail. The same with her with the invitation of Candace to Turning Point, live stream, in person, or what have you. I thought it was disingenuous how they did it, how they invited her. I thought it was a bunch of hogwash. I knew it was a trap, and I knew they weren't trying to go through with it. They weren't going to answer any of these questions that she's asked Erica. So I'm glad that her and Erica actually sat down. I think she showed Erica some things where she's ready to look into some more people, especially after hearing that the reason why she did not shut Candace down to begin with at the very beginning of her investigation is because she was learning some new information. Honestly, I think she didn't just show Erica something. I think she even showed Megyn Kelly something. I mean, Megyn Kelly said on her show earlier this week that she's gotten closer with Candace because Candace has shared some things with her to the point where she's lost respect of people she once had respect for. I'm hearing that she's unfollowed Dave Rubin on social media. Dave Rubin's complaining and bitching and moaning about how she unfollowed him on Twitter and that she's not responding to text messages and, I have friends and this, that, and the third. I think you're just another homo who's a part of this MAGA movement who keeps trying to claim he's conservative, but you're not. And you're a part of the cabal that's trying to destroy the one person who's actually asking questions. Because that is bothersome. That Dave Rubin, Tim Pool, and all the rest of them. Brandon Tatum. I mean, him and Candace started Blexit together. And I even feel like he's a sellout for $7,000 a post. That's what I think, personally. And Megyn is seeing that. And so I'm kind of glad that this meeting with Erica and Candace happened, because even Megyn is starting to see, she may not agree with Candace, but she's seen some things. Candace must have shown her something the same way I think she's shown Erica something. She hasn't told Candace to stop. At least that's what she said to Pierce. I'm so glad that she's investigating. I'm so glad that she called out these lawyers by saying, you don't have enough to convict. You don't have enough damning evidence other than his affidavit confessing. There's nothing there. There's absolutely nothing there. This guy can be found not guilty, even if he is complicit, and to some degree, because you're charging him for taking the shot, and maybe he's not the guy that took the shot. Maybe he's a part of the cover-up. Maybe he was the guy that was supposed to get rid of the clothes that the murderer, that the actual gunman was wearing. You're not going to convince us that he did this by himself. You're not going to do that. I think the feds are a part of this. I think Turning Point USA has a motive. I think those two things are made perfectly clear when you look at the timeline that I've just laid out of all of her facts. This is more clear. Now, it does show that, in my opinion, Turning Point's motive is more connected to their donors from Israel, which is making more and more sense about these Egyptian planes. Don't pay attention to the fact that they're planes from Egypt. Pay attention to the fact that they're stopping in Israel, because that's the problem. It was Bibi Netanyahu who offered hundreds of millions of dollars to Turning Point to level it up. And it's these planes that are flying through Israel to America to follow Turning Point USA Faith, where Erica and Charlie are present. Money's being funneled through Turning Point to Zionist Republicans and activists. He's questioning the money. Where is it coming from? Where is it going? He's pushing back against the Israeli lobbying group and the support for Israel. He's pushing back on that. He rejected the offer of the money. A few days later, he's killed. You're not going to convince me that Turning Point USA and that Israel doesn't have a motive here. They do. Period, full stop. That much is clear from her own timeline, from her own facts and evidence. And I believe her. Again, her investigation can be a bit messy, but once you put it in a linear, cohesive, murder board-esque timeline, like you see in these crime shows, it makes it easier to follow. And honestly, I'm going to keep doing that, because yesterday it did feel like information overload. And I literally stopped watching the episode yesterday evening and started watching it again this morning for two reasons. Number one, informational overload. And number two, I was able to stop it the second she said that the Utah police officer pulled over the suspected vehicle, one of the many suspected vehicles, and it was a Fed flashing a badge. That confirmed the feds are involved. That confirmed it. Especially because that car had not been impounded. And it's a suspected vehicle involved in the crime. Where's the car? I'm glad she's digging in. And every time she releases a new episode, I'm going to take the fact that she's doing it and I'm going to add it into the timeline depending on where this fits in. Because again, she does go all over the place. Sometimes we're back in summer of 2025 and then we're back in 2023 or 2024, depending on how TPUSA Faith is involved in some of this, because she did acknowledge that there was some more of that. But I'm going to start putting it into the timeline because it's easier to track and easier to follow. And I'd recommend that you all do that. Now, if you don't want to spend hours upon hours upon hours pulling individual transcripts of almost 2-hour-long live streams of her investigation, I would say leverage AI, have it pull all of the transcripts, research all of her episodes, have it summarize every episode of her investigation, and then start pulling it into the facts. If you guys want the prompt that I used, let me know. So that way you know how to prompt any large language model to pull the information and the data for you. But the reason why I chose Grok for this specific thing is because even Grok AI is questioning the narrative coming from the feds. And when the AI is questioning it, right, the AI that Elon built, right, I'm not saying that it's sentient. I'm just saying that it has critical thinking skills clearly more efficient than ChatGPT, because Grok, the AI, is making it clear that there are some inconsistencies with the narrative coming from the feds, and it doesn't believe the feds, which is why I chose it. So if you want the prompt, let me know in the comment section. I will provide that to you if you're interested. But my gosh, this was so desperately needed. I needed to really be able to follow along. Because again, I'm not one of these people that wants to know what her theory is. I don't think she's looking for a theory. I think she wants to draw a conclusion based on the facts. That's not theorizing. That's discovering the truth. It's discovery, not theorizing. There's a difference. People trying to make us feel like we're crazy because we see a conspiracy. It's a crime. Conspiracy that leads to death and the cover-up of said death is a crime. And it ain't working by calling her crazy because her coverage is all over the place. Well, you exercise your own critical thinking skills because my audience here, her audience, the ones who are actually really trying to follow along, exercise your own critical thinking skills, leverage the AI. I know we can all feel a kind of way about it, but honestly, it's hard to try and tie it together on your own without a team of people, and AI does make one person turn into a more efficient, it makes you more efficient with research to some degree. And so I'd say if you're not an investigator, if you're not an investigative journalist, and you're just a podcaster or you're just someone who just wants to follow along, do what I did. Feed it all into the AI and have it put it together because that helped so much. And it definitely made it easier for me to say confidently that Turning Point USA has a motive, that Israel has a motive, that the feds played a role. Was it in planning his murder, executing the man, or the cover up, or all three? That is what's unclear. But I know that they were involved to some degree, especially when you're hearing about this little intelligence base that she talked about in yesterday's episode, which obviously is not mentioned here in the timeline. Literally stops, I believe I stopped the timeline right around the time of the investigation or the manhunt, I should say. I haven't picked up right after that. But I had to understand the lead up first before we started going into the actual nitty gritty of the cover up of his murder as well. But man, man. If you guys actually want a copy of this, let me know in the comment section. Again, it's only 70 to 80% accurate. I don't trust it without having pulled individual transcripts of all of her episodes where she was covering everything. This is literally just from the research that the AI did on its own based on how I prompted it. And so I can only guarantee that it's 70 to 80% correct. So if you want a copy of this timeline, you guys got to let me know in the comment section because I am not going to take the time to turn this into a PDF. But if you want it, I will make it available some way. I'll figure that out. But I just need to know if you want it before I take the time to figure that out. But that is my time, ladies and gentlemen. Again, if you are interested, head over to the Substack and go ahead and watch the cartoon, The Disavow Gala. Click the link in the description to download your free copy of Becoming Brazen, my own political drama. Again, it is vulgar. It is not professionally edited. I wrote this in 2017 when I was in my early 20s in my Jackie Collins phase. And my red pill journey had begun. I think you're going to like it. I think you're going to be entertained. Let me know what you think. That's my time, everyone. God bless you all. And until next time.